When I first moved into that little two-bedroom apartment with Hannah, I honestly thought I'd hit the roommate jackpot. She seemed perfect, friendly, laid back, funny in that effortlessly sarcastic way. We met through a mutual friend who swore she was easygoing and responsible. The apartment itself was nothing fancy, an old building with creaky floors, thin walls, and a kitchen so small that two people couldn't cook at the same time, but I didn't care. Rent was cheap, the neighborhood was decent, and I was just relieved to get out of my old place with a roommate who left dirty dishes everywhere. The first few weeks with Hannah were great. We'd stay up late watching trashy reality shows, sharing popcorn, gossiping about work. We even started a mini Sunday ritual. One of us would cook breakfast, and the other would make coffee. It felt like having a sister. But that honeymoon phase didn't last long. The first red flag came about a month in. I remember coming home from work starving, already craving the leftover chicken Alfredo I'd made the night before. I opened the fridge and my container was gone. Not moved, gone. I searched every shelf, even the freezer, but it had vanished. When Hannah got home later, I asked if she'd seen it. She just laughed and said, "Oh, that was yours?" I thought it was old. I stared at her like, "Old? I made it last night." I told her it wasn't a big deal, but that I'd appreciate it if she asked before eating my stuff. She said, "Of course," with that same breezy smile, and I naively believed it. Over the next week, little things started disappearing. My oat milk level kept dropping. My favorite Greek yogurt, gone. My expensive cold brew concentrate, half empty. At first, I genuinely thought I was imagining it. Maybe I was using more than I realized. Maybe I'd forgotten finishing that yogurt. But deep down, I knew. So I decided to test it. One night, I took a Sharpie and drew tiny black lines on my milk carton to mark the level. I did the same on my orange juice, my salad dressing, anything she might be tempted to borrow. The next morning, my suspicions were confirmed. The milk line had dropped, and the bottle had been turned so the mark wasn't visible from the front. She'd moved it. That meant she knew exactly what she was doing. When I confronted her gently again, she brushed it off like it was a joke. "Relax, it's just milk. We're roommates, not strangers." I told her I didn't mind sharing, but it had to be mutual, because I wasn't exactly drinking her stuff. She rolled her eyes and said, "Fine, I'll stop." Spoiler, she didn't. Things escalated fast after that. I'd come home after long shifts to find my leftovers eaten, snacks gone, and my food containers mysteriously missing from the dishwasher. I started labeling things with sticky notes that said, "Please don't touch," or "Not yours." She'd laugh and make fun of me, calling me mom or food police. Once, she even left a note back that said, "Sharing is caring." The audacity was unreal. The tipping point came one Friday night. I'd splurged on a pint of Ben & Jerry's as a treat for surviving a brutal work week. I put it in the freezer with a bright pink sticky note that said, "Do not eat." When I got home the next night, exhausted and ready to collapse on the couch, I opened the freezer and saw the empty container right on top. My spoon sticking out of it. Like she wanted me to find it. That was when I snapped. I knew talking wouldn't work, and I didn't want a full-blown confrontation that would make living together unbearable. So I needed another approach. Something clever. Something that would scare her just enough to make her stop. The idea came to me randomly one night while scrolling TikTok. I saw a video of someone whose roommate kept stealing snacks, so they started labeling everything with fake allergy warnings. Stuff like "contains shrimp extract" or "processed in a facility that handles shellfish." I actually laughed out loud, but then paused and thought, wait a second, that might actually work. The next morning, I printed out fake allergen warning labels from Google, cut them neatly, and stuck them on my groceries. My almond milk got a label that said, "Warning, contains traces of tree nuts and shellfish." My salad dressing, manufactured in a facility that processes shrimp and peanuts. My yogurt, may cause allergic reaction in sensitive individuals. I went all out. Even my frozen meals had fake warnings taped across them. It looked ridiculous, but effective. See, Hannah had told me on our very first day living together that she had mild food allergies. Nothing severe, but she avoided nuts and shellfish like the plague. Perfect. For the next week, my food remained untouched. It was bliss. My shelf in the fridge looked exactly the same every day. My leftovers stayed where I left them. I thought I'd finally found the solution. I even started relaxing around her again, pretending nothing happened. I should have known better. One night, I came home from work and noticed something strange. My yogurt cup had been moved slightly forward. My milk carton felt lighter. My pasta sauce wasn't sealed properly. And then I noticed it, one of my fake labels had been peeled off and stuck back on crooked. I checked the trash can, and there it was, one of my contained shellfish labels crumpled up among coffee grounds. My stomach dropped. She knew. She'd figured it out. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the fridge, trying to process it. Did she realize they were fake? Or was she testing me? I felt this weird mix of fear and anger bubbling up. It wasn't just about food anymore, it felt personal. Like she was doing it to mess with me now. I decided to stay quiet, to wait and see what she'd do next. Maybe she'd back off again. Maybe I was just overreacting. But then, the next morning, I opened the fridge to grab my coffee creamer and saw something that made my heart skip. A small yellow sticky note tucked behind my yogurt, written in neat, confident handwriting. It said, "Nice try." No smiley face. No joke. Just those 2 words. That was the moment I realized Hannah wasn't just being selfish or inconsiderate. She was playing a game. And I wasn't sure I wanted to find out what the next move was. After finding that note, "Nice try," I just stood there in front of the open fridge for what felt like forever. The light flickered slightly, the hum of the old refrigerator filled the silence, and I remember this weird chill running down my back. It wasn't just about food anymore. That note felt like a message, like she was mocking me, daring me to do something about it. I tossed the note in the trash, but my mind was spinning. I tried to shake it off, told myself I was overreacting, but that night I could barely sleep. Every creak in the apartment made me feel like she was up, moving around, maybe even touching my stuff again. The next morning, I decided I needed proof, real, undeniable proof that she was stealing from me. So I bought a tiny motion-activated camera online. It was shaped like a phone charger, barely noticeable. I plugged it into the outlet across from the fridge, pointed straight at my shelf. I told myself it was just for peace of mind. 2 days later, when I checked the footage, my hands were shaking. There she was, Hannah, opening my yogurt, eating it while standing right in front of the fridge, looking around like she knew she shouldn't be doing it. And then, as if to rub it in, she put the empty container back, resealed with the lid. But what really got me was what she did after. She leaned closer to my food shelf, reading the allergy warnings, and smirked. She actually laughed. That quiet, smug laugh I'd started to hate. And then she said, under her breath, "You're not that smart, Riley." Hearing her say my name like that made me feel sick. I replayed the video over and over, each time feeling more furious. I had the evidence now, but what could I even do with it? I couldn't just show her and demand she stop. She'd know I was recording her without permission, which wasn't exactly legal in our state. I felt trapped. I didn't want to move out, but I couldn't keep living like this. So I decided to fight back differently, not with confrontation, but with manipulation. If she wanted to play games, I could play better. I went to the grocery store and picked up a few new special ingredients. I made a big batch of pasta salad, her favorite, because of course she always stole mine, and added just a little too much hot sauce. The kind that burns for minutes after one bite. Then, I covered it with one of my fake labels. Warning, contains traces of shrimp. I placed it right in the middle of the fridge, obvious, like bait. That night, when I came home from work, the bowl was half empty. I didn't even have to check to know who did it. Later, I heard her coughing in her room, muttering something about that stupid spice. I tried not to smile. It wasn't even about revenge anymore, it was about taking control. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was winning. But the feeling didn't last long. A few days later, I came home to find something off. My camera, the fake phone charger, was gone. The outlet was empty. My stomach dropped. I checked my drawer where I'd hidden the memory card, and that was gone too. I tore through my room, checked under my bed, my closet, even behind the TV. Nothing. She must have found it. Panic started to creep in. I didn't know what she'd do with the footage, but something told me she wasn't just going to ignore it. That night, she came home later than usual, humming to herself like she always did when she was in a suspiciously good mood. She waved at me from the kitchen doorway. "Hey, Riley," she said casually, "you do anything fun today?" I could barely meet her eyes. "Just worked," I muttered. "You?" She smiled, this slow, deliberate smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, just cleaning up some things." I didn't ask what she meant, but I knew. The next morning, I woke up to find my shelf in the fridge completely empty. Every single item, milk, yogurt, leftovers, sauces, gone. Even the fake labels were peeled off and left in a pile on the counter. On top of them was another sticky note. This one said, "Let's stop pretending." My hands were trembling when I read it. I didn't know what she meant exactly, but it sounded threatening. Like she knew I was recording her, knew I was trying to outsmart her. I thought about calling our mutual friend, the one who'd introduced us, but what would I even say? "Hey, your friend's eating my food and leaving creepy notes?" It sounded ridiculous. But when I went to work that day, I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about what she might do next. And sure enough, when I got home that night, something was off again. My room door was slightly open. I never left it open. My dresser drawer, where I kept my important stuff, my documents, my spare cash, looked rifled through. My stomach flipped. I rushed inside, checking everything. Nothing seemed missing, but everything was just moved. My space had been invaded. That was the breaking point. I waited until she got home and confronted her, shaking with anger. She looked up from her phone with that same cool expression and said, "What are you talking about?" I told her to stop touching my stuff, to stop going through my room, and that if she didn't, I'd call the landlord. She just stared at me, then smiled, slow, cold, deliberate. "Sure, Riley," she said softly. "But remember, you're not innocent either." I froze. "What does that mean?" I asked, but she just walked away, laughing under her breath. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying her words, "You're not innocent either." What did she mean? Did she have the footage from my camera? Was she planning to use it somehow? The next morning, I got my answer. When I opened the fridge, there was one single item left inside, a jar of my peanut butter. My name was written on it in her handwriting. And just below that, she'd added a new label. "Allergy warning, contains secrets." I swear my hands went cold. It wasn't just a prank anymore. It felt like a warning. That label, "Allergy warning, contains secrets," haunted me for the rest of the day. It sat there in my mind like a riddle I couldn't solve. I couldn't tell if she was taunting me, threatening me, or just playing another one of her twisted little games. But one thing was clear, this had gone way past food. It was psychological now. Every sound in the apartment made me flinch. Every door creak, every rustle from the fridge made my stomach twist. I started locking my bedroom door every night. I even shoved a chair under the handle before sleeping. I told myself it was temporary, that she'd get bored eventually and stop, but she didn't. Instead, she got more creative. A few days later, I woke up to find that all the labels in the fridge, mine, hers, everything, had been replaced with new ones, all written in her handwriting. My carton of milk now said, "For sharing only." My salad dressing, "Don't be greedy." My Tupperware container with leftovers, "Calories taste better when you're honest." I felt sick reading them. It wasn't just a joke anymore, it was personal. She was trying to get inside my head. And the worst part was, it was working. I started second-guessing myself about everything, whether I was being too paranoid, too dramatic, too controlling. But then something happened that confirmed everything. One night, I stayed late at work to finish a project. When I got home around midnight, the apartment was dark except for the kitchen light. I figured she'd left it on again, so I went to turn it off. But when I stepped into the kitchen, I froze. Hannah was sitting on the floor, in front of the open fridge, eating something from one of my containers. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. She just looked up, spoon halfway to her mouth, and said, "Oh, you're home early." My brain was spinning. "What are you doing?" I managed to say. "Having a snack," she replied casually. "Yours looked good." My heart was pounding. "That's mine, Hannah." You can't just, she interrupted me, tilting her head slightly. Can't what? Eat food in my own apartment. I blinked. Our apartment, I corrected. She smiled. Right. Our apartment. So why are you labeling everything like it's a crime scene? I didn't answer. I just walked over, grabbed my container from her hands, and put it on the counter. I could feel my fingers shaking. This is insane, I said quietly. You're crossing every boundary possible. She stood up slowly, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, and leaned in close enough for me to smell the food she'd just eaten. You should stop pretending you're better than me, Riley, she said softly. You play your little tricks, but you're no different. You lie too. My breath caught in my throat. What are you talking about? She smiled, small, tight, unsettling. You'll see. Then she walked past me and disappeared into her room, leaving the fridge door open and my nerves completely shattered. I didn't sleep that night. I sat up in bed, replaying her words in my head. You lie too. What lie? What was she talking about? I was the victim here. I was the one being stolen from, manipulated, harassed. But the way she said it made me feel like there was something I was missing. The next day, I came home from work to find the apartment eerily quiet. The lights were off, but the fridge light was glowing faintly. When I opened it, I almost screamed. Inside, every shelf was empty, again, except for one container. A clear plastic one with my handwriting on the lid, "Do not touch." Only the contents weren't food. It was my motion camera, the one she had taken. It was sitting inside the container, plugged into a portable charger, and next to it was a folded piece of paper. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely open it. It was a printed image, a still frame from the camera footage. Me, standing in front of the fridge, labeling my food, smirking to myself. It should have been harmless, except in the corner of the image, I saw her reflection, watching me. She'd been standing in the hallway, behind me, the whole time I was recording. Watching silently. My heart felt like it stopped. That meant she knew about the camera from the very beginning. She'd let me think I was clever, let me believe I was catching her, when really, she'd been one step ahead the entire time. I stumbled back, dropped the photo, and felt this surge of panic rise up my throat. I ran to my room, locked the door, and started packing my stuff. I didn't care about the rent, didn't care about breaking the lease. I just wanted to get out. But right as I zipped up my bag, I heard a soft knock. Riley? Her voice was calm. Too calm. Can we talk? I didn't answer. Come on, she said, her tone almost gentle now. You don't have to be scared. I think we just misunderstood each other. I stayed silent, frozen on the edge of my bed. You've been sneaky, she continued through the door. Hiding cameras, printing fake labels, acting like a victim. But you know what's funny? You never asked why I eat your food. Her voice dropped quieter, almost a whisper. Maybe you should have asked. The sound of her footsteps moving away finally broke me. I didn't care what she meant. I waited until I didn't hear her anymore, grabbed my bag, and crept toward the front door. But when I reached for the handle, I noticed something taped to it, a note. My name, written neatly in her handwriting. Inside, it said, "You can leave, but the truth stays here." I didn't understand what she meant, but I didn't stick around to find out. I left that night and went straight to my friend's couch. I told myself I'd go back in the morning, get the rest of my stuff, and never see her again. But when I did, the apartment wasn't how I left it. The fridge door was wide open. The lights were on. And all of my things, everything from my shelf, were back in the fridge again, neatly arranged, each item relabeled in her handwriting. Every single one of them said the same thing, allergy warning, Riley. When I saw that, every item in the fridge labeled allergy warning, Riley, something inside me broke. It wasn't anger anymore. It was fear. Deep, skin-crawling fear. The kind that made my throat tighten and my hands start trembling. I didn't know what it meant, but it felt wrong. Like she was trying to erase the line between us, between who owned what, who was who. I stood there staring at the fridge for so long that the cold air started to sting my arms. My own name was staring back at me from every jar, carton, and container. My yogurt, my milk, even a container that wasn't mine, all marked with my name. I slowly backed away from the fridge, feeling my chest tighten. The apartment was dead quiet. Too quiet. I glanced around and realized Hannah's door was wide open. Her bed was unmade, her laptop gone, but her phone charger still plugged into the wall. I called out her name, once, twice, nothing. My voice sounded small in that silence. I grabbed my phone, ready to call our landlord or maybe even the police, but before I could, my screen lit up. It was a message. From Hannah. One single text. Check the freezer. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed to just walk out, leave everything, never look back. But something in me, the same part that needed to understand why this had all started, made me do it. I walked to the freezer, every step heavy and slow. The light inside flickered when I opened it. At first, I didn't see anything unusual, just some frozen vegetables, ice trays, and a Tupperware container. The same kind I always used. Only this one wasn't mine. The label on top read, "Do not eat." My handwriting. But I hadn't written that one. I knew every marker stroke of my Sharpie pen, and that one was just slightly off. The handwriting looked like mine, but not quite. A perfect imitation. I hesitated, then slowly lifted the lid. Inside wasn't food. It was a pile of my missing things, my old camera memory card, my spare house key, one of my missing sticky notes. And underneath them was a folded piece of paper. I picked it up and unfolded it. My own handwriting stared back at me. It was one of my grocery lists from weeks ago, but parts of it had been crossed out and rewritten in her handwriting, blending with mine, our words tangled together. And at the bottom, in bold letters, she'd written, "We eat the same things now." I dropped the paper, my hands shaking. None of this made sense anymore. Was she trying to mess with my mind? To copy me? To become me? I slammed the freezer shut, grabbed my phone, and ran out of the apartment. I didn't stop until I was at the corner of the street, gasping for breath. I called my best friend, Melissa, and told her everything. She didn't even let me finish before saying, "You're not going back there, Riley. Ever." I stayed at her place for the next few nights, too afraid to even walk past my old street. But on the third night, I got another text. Unknown number. No name, no profile photo. Just a message, "You left your food here." I blocked the number instantly, but my hands were still shaking. Melissa told me to report it to the landlord, so I did. He agreed to meet me at the apartment the next morning to inspect things and possibly change the locks. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, when we got to the building, the door was slightly ajar. My heart started pounding again. The landlord looked uneasy, but pushed it open. The apartment smelled off. Sour, stale, mixed with something burnt. "Maybe a fuse went," he said, trying to sound calm. I followed him inside, but what I saw made me stop cold. Every cabinet in the kitchen was open. My labeled containers were scattered everywhere, on the counters, on the floor, even on the couch. All of them empty. The labels were still on them, but they looked smudged, like someone had touched them with wet hands. The fridge was humming loudly. I opened it and nearly dropped to my knees. Every shelf was filled again, but not with food. With paper. Sheets of notebook paper, each one covered in handwriting. My handwriting. Grocery lists, notes, sticky labels, reminders, everything I'd ever written for myself in that apartment, copied over and over, but with slight differences. Words replaced, letters off, some of them mixed with her handwriting again. On one of them, written in red ink, were the words, "You forgot to label yourself." The landlord muttered something about someone losing it and said we'd better file a police report. I barely heard him. I was too busy scanning the kitchen, looking for any sign that she'd been there recently. But she wasn't. No clothes, no toiletries, nothing. It was like she'd just vanished. That night, I stayed with Melissa again, but I couldn't stop thinking about the freezer note, about the way she'd written like me. The more I thought about it, the more I started remembering small things, her using my pen without asking, her taking my old shopping lists off the fridge, her asking me how I spelled certain words. At the time, it seemed normal. Now, it felt calculated. I started to wonder if she'd been collecting pieces of me all along. The next day, the landlord called. He sounded shaken. He said the police had gone by the apartment to do a welfare check, and while they didn't find Hannah, they did find something else. In the bathroom cabinet, tucked behind the cleaning supplies, was a small notebook. It had my name on the front, Riley, but inside were pages of writing that weren't mine. Journal entries. In Hannah's handwriting. Some were about me. Most of them were about food. The first entry was harmless. Riley doesn't like when I borrow her milk. But as the pages went on, they got darker. Riley doesn't notice when I replace things. Riley likes control. Riley's handwriting is easy to copy. And then the last entry, written in all caps, Riley is inside everything now. I couldn't breathe when the landlord told me that. I hung up and sat in silence for hours, staring at my phone, not knowing what to do. Was she obsessed with me? Was she still out there, watching? The police said they'd keep looking, but they didn't sound optimistic. It's been 2 weeks since then. I still haven't gone back for the rest of my stuff. Every now and then, I think about that freezer message. We eat the same things now and wonder if it was literal or metaphorical. I try not to think about it, but sometimes when I open Melissa's fridge, I swear I can smell my old pasta sauce. And last night, when I reached for the milk, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A small, white sticker on the carton. The words written neatly in black marker. Allergy warning, contains traces of Riley. It's been a month since I last saw Hannah. Or at least since I think I last saw her. I moved twice, changed my number, and even deleted all my old social media accounts. I told myself it was just to feel safe, to start over. But deep down, I know it's because I keep catching glimpses of her. Not directly, just shadows, reflections, strange movements in crowds that vanish when I turn my head. I've convinced myself it's paranoia. Or at least, I try to. After the milk carton incident at Melissa's, I made her swear she hadn't written that label. She promised she hadn't, but she also looked pale, like she didn't completely believe me when I said I didn't either. We ended up throwing everything in the fridge away that night. I wanted to leave, but she wouldn't let me. Said I was too shaken to be alone. That night, I barely slept. Every time the house creaked, I thought of Hannah standing behind me in the kitchen, smiling with that smug little smirk. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those fake allergy labels with my own name scrawled across them. And then something happened that made me realize this wasn't over. The next morning, Melissa woke me up holding her phone, her hands shaking. "You need to see this," she whispered. It was an email, sent from an address that looked familiar. The subject line said, "Roommate rules." The body of the message was short. Just one sentence. "If you don't want people eating your food, label it better next time." Attached was a photo. It was my old fridge, back in the apartment. But it wasn't empty anymore. Every shelf was full, packed with food that wasn't mine, but every single container had a label. And every label said, "Property of Riley." I felt sick. I told Melissa to delete it, but she refused. She said we should go to the police again. I agreed, but I already knew how that would go. They'd say it was just harassment, maybe a cruel prank. They'd tell me to block the email and move on. They wouldn't understand that it wasn't just a threat, it was a continuation. I started thinking about how much she'd learned about me while we lived together. My handwriting, my routines, my favorite foods. She knew the brand of my yogurt, the type of milk I bought, the exact way I arranged things in the fridge. She could have replicated it anywhere. Maybe she already had. For the next few days, I stayed mostly in my room, working remotely, trying to distract myself. But I started noticing small things again. The fridge light flickering when no one opened it. A faint smell, like my old pasta sauce, coming from the kitchen even though we hadn't cooked in days. Once, I opened the fridge and thought I saw a jar that looked familiar, the same brand of peanut butter I used to buy, but when I blinked, it wasn't there. I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind. Then, 2 nights ago, something happened that made me question if this had ever been just about food. Melissa was out late with her boyfriend, and I was home alone. Around midnight, I heard a soft thud from the kitchen. I froze, my chest tightening. Another sound, like the fridge door opening. I crept out slowly, my phone flashlight trembling in my hand. The kitchen looked empty, but the fridge was slightly ajar. Cold light spilled across the floor. I swallowed hard and pulled the door open. Inside, there were only 3 items: a half-empty jar of peanut butter, a single yogurt cup, and a folded piece of paper taped to the shelf. I already knew whose handwriting it was. Hannah's. My heart was hammering so hard I could barely breathe as I opened it. The note said, "I learned your recipe." I dropped it like it was on fire. I slammed the fridge shut, locked myself in my room, and didn't come out until morning. When Melissa got home, I told her everything. She didn't say anything for a while, just stood there with her arms crossed, her jaw tight. Then she said, "You said Hannah was allergic to shellfish, right?" I nodded. "Why?" Melissa opened the trash can and pointed. There, on top of the trash, was an empty takeout box from a seafood restaurant. The receipt was stapled to it. Paid in cash. The name on the delivery label? Riley M. My name. I felt my entire body go cold. That was yesterday. Today, I'm writing this from a small motel outside town. Melissa begged me not to leave, but I couldn't stay there anymore. Not after last night. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to my phone buzzing. Unknown number. Against every instinct, I answered. There was no voice, just the sound of chewing. Wet, rhythmic, deliberate chewing. And then, after a few seconds, a whisper. "You shouldn't have labeled me." The line went dead. I threw my phone across the room and sat there in silence until sunrise. I called the police again this morning, but they said without a direct threat or proof of location, there's nothing they can do. I'm supposed to document everything. How do you document losing your mind? How do you explain that someone might be trying to become you? Before I left, I went back to the old apartment one last time to grab whatever was left. The landlord had changed the locks, but he let me in. The fridge was still there, unplugged, doors wide open. Empty except for one small sticker, stuck right in the middle of the inside door. It said, in that familiar handwriting, "Allergy warning, contains you." I haven't eaten since. Every time I look at food now, I think about her handwriting. Her voice. Her smirk. I think about how easily she could have replaced things, mixed things, swapped ingredients without me ever noticing. And sometimes, late at night, when I finally force myself to eat something, I swear I can taste her favorite hot sauce, the one I never bought, but somehow always ended up in my food. I'm trying to move on. Really, I am. But sometimes I catch myself writing grocery lists the way she used to write them. Or labeling my food without realizing it. My therapist says it's trauma. But a small, terrified part of me keeps wondering if maybe she really did learn my recipe. Maybe, somewhere out there, Hannah is living in a new apartment, filling her fridge, labeling everything with my name, and pretending to be me. Or maybe she's closer than that. Maybe she never left.